Every 3 to 6 months, I like to make a video predicting players that I believe that are on the cusp of being traded in the NFL. Now, of course, I'm just a guy that makes YouTube videos, so I could be dead wrong, or I could hit these trade predictions absolutely on the spot. As a matter of fact, the last time we did this was in January, and as you can see from the thumbnail, each and every one of the players that we mentioned ended up getting traded, whereas there was like 1 or 2 players that have consistently been on this list but have yet to be traded. So what's going on, guys? Your boy Mike here. I apologize, it's been a while since I last come out with a video, but news has been slow in the NFL, and I do not like bombarding your sub boxes unless if there's a good reason to do so. Now, before we get to the content, I wanted you guys to select what I should give away next in the comment section down below. Whichever has the highest liked comments or the most comments of is going to win. It's either a next-gen console, or an autographed jersey, or a pair of Apple AirPod Maxes. And of course, for those of you guys that don't know, I announce the winner on my community tab, unless if I'm doing the giveaway on Instagram. Now, without further ado, if you guys could sack the like button for the YouTube algorithm, and now that we got all that out of the way, break! Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? I'm going to start with the most obvious candidates to get traded and probably work my way down to a little bit less obvious. The most obvious player that is potentially going to get traded, and we can't make a list if we don't include this player, is Aaron Rodgers. Now, look, Aaron Rodgers is a generational talent that is in a situation that, at least to most NFL fans, we're fairly baffled by it. A lot of it doesn't even make any sense. The day of the NFL draft, Aaron Rodgers caught wind that the San Francisco 49ers were interested in trading for him, and I think at that point, that's when he decided to try his best to make a power move to get to San Francisco, get the 49ers to trade the number 3 overall pick for him. But alas, that didn't work. The 49ers elected to select Trey Lance instead. And we've made multiple videos on the subject as to why Aaron Rodgers is so disgruntled, but to summarize it as much as I can, because there's multiple reasons why he is apparently disgruntled, is it mainly stems from the fact that the Green Bay Packers drafted his replacement in the first round last year, as opposed to getting him additional help. That kind of rubbed him the wrong way, and as a result, if you ask me, he's been coming up with a bunch of different weird excuses as to why he's so upset with the Green Bay Packers. Like, one of the reasons are the fact that Aaron Rodgers had this attachment to a practice squad player by the name of Jake Kumerow, and when he came out and gave a glowing endorsement of Jake Kumerow, the Green Bay Packers elected to release Jake Kumerow, and this apparently is one of the things that rubbed Aaron the wrong way. But I think the main issue here is the fact that Aaron Rodgers wants a little bit more of a commitment to him, or he just wants to be able to spend his final good productive seasons in a superstar caliber offense with weapons like Courtland Sutton, Noah Fant, Melvin Gordon, and Jerry Jeudy surrounding him, with a remarkable defense that features Bradley Chubb, Von Miller, Patrick Surtain, and wants to lead that team to multiple Super Bowls. Very similar to another player that happened to leave the team that he was on for 2 decades for a brand new team in sunny Florida and formed a super team that featured Antonio Brown, Rob Gronkowski, Leonard Fournette, already had Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. That's at least what I believe he's angling for. Now, the odds of this happening all really depend upon Jordan Love's development. So far, like any quarterback, he's had some good days in camp, he's had some bad days in camp, but he even said that if called upon,
I was drafted here to play quarterback, so I'll definitely be ready week 1.
All I know is if the Denver Broncos were to acquire Aaron Rodgers, they would be an absolute super team, and the Green Bay Packers would get a king's ransom in return for him. But so far, neither side appears to be budging, but he is a player that we should keep an eye on, because if Jordan Love does take that leap, expect Aaron Rodgers to get traded. Now, the next player on this list is a little bit more difficult to predict the future of, and that's Stephon Gilmore. This is a player that has had one of the most remarkably underrated careers we've ever seen for a defensive back. He's a 2-time first-team All-Pro, has made 4 Pro Bowls, won a Super Bowl, and was the 2019 NFL Defensive Player of the Year. The thing is, typically, at least for cornerbacks, it's very rare that you see a cornerback that has the longevity that Stephon Gilmore has had, to the point where he could potentially secure a third big contract. He signed with the New England Patriots on a 5-year, $65 million contract in 2017, but after a series of restructures, that value was really more like $8 million per season. The result of this has led to Stephon Gilmore holding out during training camp for the New England Patriots. And obviously, when there's a holdout, well, there's a myriad of different ways that it could end. One, the player could get traded, or the player could get signed to an extension. In this instance, it wouldn't shock me if Bill Belichick decided to ship Gilmore to a different team after suspecting that Stephon Gilmore's best seasons might be behind him. But at the same time, would Bill Belichick really be willing to give up one of his best defensive pieces and the continuity that his defenses have been able to build through Gilmore's skill set just because he didn't want to pay him? This is a man that just went on one of the craziest spending sprees we've ever seen in Patriots history. But we'll have to see. Stephon Gilmore does have a tremendous amount of suitors, including the Seattle Seahawks, and even Jalen Ramsey of the Los Angeles Rams attempted to recruit Stephon Gilmore over, and we all know that the LA Rams have no problem with mortgaging draft picks in order to get substantial talent in return. If there's a player that we definitely need to discuss whenever we make such a list, it's Odell Beckham Jr. Now, he has been on each and every one of these lists every time I've made a trade video, and not once did he get traded. So I just wanted to give you that disclaimer. Yeah, I do make takes, but I'll also own up whenever my takes are wrong. And this is one that historically I've been wrong on. Now, this has nothing to do with Odell Beckham Jr.'s skill set, because I think he's one of the most phenomenally talented players in the entire NFL. What he does athletically and his skill set is one that isn't really easily found in the NFL today. But there are two issues when it comes to OBJ. One is his consistency and how much you could depend upon him, because historically he's been injured during times where teams have needed him the most. Look no further than last season. The Cleveland Browns could have definitely used a number one wide receiver as they were trying to make their playoff push. The next thing that is important to acknowledge is the fact that the Cleveland Browns were fine without Odell Beckham Jr. They were fine in the sense that they were able to do well without him, but depending upon him is what costed him at the end. When you have a season of success with one of your highest paid players, is it really worth bringing that player back? Because there are a myriad of teams that would jump at the opportunity to buy low on Odell Beckham Jr. after he had one very iffy season in Cleveland and the other where he injured his ACL. Last year, Baker Mayfield saw a huge leap in production. Was that as a result of Kevin Stefanski's offensive scheme that prioritized a zone running attack that featured both Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt? Or was that because he wasn't as concerned with getting the football to one of the biggest divas in the NFL, supposedly? You could really make an argument for both sides, which is why Odell Beckham Jr. is on this list. And no matter what, he is one of the best players in the NFL, and should the Browns elect to move him, expect there to be a lot of suitors. I know I frequently mention the Los Angeles Rams, but they have had interest in the past, and so have the San Francisco 49ers. Another player that I think we've made a bajillion videos on this channel is Deshaun Watson, a player that originally had a very innocent trade request at the beginning of the offseason, a player that was very frustrated with the fact that the Houston Texans were the third worst team in the entire NFL and didn't even have a NFL draft pick to show for it because they decided to trade multiple first-round picks for Laramie Tunsil, a player that is without a doubt one of the generational talents of the NFL. But at this point, not only do I think it's to Deshaun Watson's benefit for a change of scenery, which, by the way, he is also interested in the Denver Broncos supposedly, but I think it's to the Houston Texans' benefit to trade Deshaun Watson for a boatload of NFL draft picks. I can imagine a team being willing to part with even 4 first-round picks plus for a player of Deshaun Watson's caliber. And that's even before we bring up what's gone on with Deshaun Watson legally this offseason. Now, I've made multiple videos on this, but I also made a TikTok on this, which is significantly shorter if you guys want a nice little 1.5-minute summary as to what has happened. But legal issues aside, there are multiple teams that are still interested in trading for Deshaun Watson, assuming that he's able to play this season. One of those teams being the Philadelphia Eagles, the aforementioned Denver Broncos, And if you ask me, I think the Houston Texans would probably engage the Philadelphia Eagles the most because they have the most draft capital next year. The Eagles have their own first-round pick, they have a pick from the Dolphins, then they have 2 second-round picks of their own and the Carson Wentz trade, so they could definitely bundle that with potentially Jalen Hurts and a package for Deshaun Watson. And given the way the Houston Texans have gone about their offseason, given the fact that Deshaun Watson has missed OTAs and minicamp, given the fact that the Houston Texans went out and drafted Davis Webb in the 3rd round and signed Tyrod Taylor in the offseason, there's a chance that there's a contingency plan in place for life after Deshaun Watson, but at the same time, that contingency plan could be for in the event that they have to go a season without Deshaun Watson. Needless to say, this is a player that is always going to be on this list until he does get traded or until he reaffirms his commitment to Houston, very similarly to Aaron Rodgers. And finally, I think this player is probably the most underrated player on this entire list, and that's Gardner Minsch. I can't believe that no one has even attempted to trade for this guy, because I think if he was given a legitimate shot with a good offense in the NFL, he could actually be a starting caliber quarterback for a lot of NFL teams. To give you an idea, check out these numbers throughout his entire career. Gardner Minsch, through the 2 seasons he did play in the NFL, had a completion percentage of 63%, threw 37 touchdowns, and only had 11 interceptions. Last year, he had a 66% completion percentage in 8 games, and I'm not necessarily saying that this guy is the next coming of Patrick Mahomes, but I do believe that he deserves to be a starter on a team if you have a player like Andy Dalton starting for the Chicago Bears, or Drew Lock for the Denver Broncos. The fact that he is just going to be sitting on the Jacksonville Jaguars bench doing absolutely nothing, I believe is a huge waste, and I believe you don't hear him in as many trade requests because, well, he's not necessarily a star in this league. He didn't lose his starting job because he's a horrible QB. He lost his starting job because he got injured at the wrong time, and the Jacksonville Jaguars ended up bottoming out to the point where, well, the most transcendent quarterback of the past decade ended up falling in their laps. What were they supposed to do? Not select Trevor Lawrence for Gardner Minsch? And look, I have so many more players that I believe are about to get traded, but I don't want this video to go on for so long, so let me know if there are any players in the comment section down below that I missed out on. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.